So at the age of 41, I found my marriage dissolving. And at that point, I had been married for over half of my life. And that allowed me a substantial amount of time to carve a pretty solid identity. I was a mother and a wife. And although the divorce didn't change my identity as a mother, part of my identity was very much shifting. And I didn't really pay attention to that. In the 3 years after was emotionally tumultuous. I had had a handful of relationships that all ended in complete frustration and several in heartache. And I paused just long enough to realize there was a pattern. And I didn't want to see it. I didn't like it. I realized I was the common denominator. And that was painful. And so to reassure me, my ego lovingly offered up more productive thoughts. Like, it's not you. These men loved you. You're lovable. You even got several marriage proposals. But when I tuned in to the authentic soul part of me, I knew that wasn't true. I knew that not one of these men loved me. And in that moment, I also realized that my husband probably didn't really love me either. I think they fell in love, or I know they fell in love, with the person I showed them, with the person they wanted me to be. And from a really young age, I was very gifted, if you can use that term, with the ability of being a chameleon, to become whatever somebody wanted and needed, to keep the peace, to feel valuable, to feel special. And I had done that in all of these relationships. In essence, I was pretending I was wearing a mask. And, this awakening started at the end of my marriage. It was like a fissure. And with each one of these failed relationships, it was like the fissure got wider and wider until I was standing at this huge crevice in the earth, just this dark crevice. And I had to face some really dark and uncomfortable truths, that these men hadn't loved me. They didn't know me. And I didn't know me. And if I didn't know me, I couldn't love me. And as I continued to delve into this dark abyss, I admitted to myself that many of these relationships I hung on to for way longer than was healthy, or that I knew they should expire, but I didn't end them because I didn't feel safe to. I didn't think that I was going to find somebody else. I wasn't valuable enough. And the safety thing, I didn't feel safe by myself. And, I have a story that illustrates that. My sister was getting married in Maui, and she invited me to come. So I spent 7 days with her and my soon-to-be brother-in-law, and we had a fabulous time. And they got married on the 7th day, and so the next 3 days I was to spend time by myself as they went on their honeymoon. And as she dropped me off at the hotel, I started to get emotional and upset, and she saw this and says, "Hey, what's going on?" And I said, I'm nervous. Like, I'm so far from the airport, and I got to check in, and then I don't know how to get to the airport. And I started panicking a little, and I was at this time crying. And she's like, "Wait a minute, So if Colin and the boys were here, that's my ex-husband, what would you do? And I was like, oh, well, I would check us in and, and I would arrange for a cab and we'd get to the airport and I'd make sure everybody. She's like, exactly. So you'd take care of 4 people, which is way more than one person. So forget about it. And she dismissed it and she left. But that hit me because I was like, wow, I've been so busy taking care of other people. I don't really know how to do it for me. So in my living room, tears running down my face, I made myself a promise that I was going to fall madly in love with myself. I was going to love myself like nobody has loved me. I wasn't sure how I was going to do that, but I knew that the number one thing is I was going to have to be single. I did not like that at all. I'd never lived on my own before this, and nobody really wants to be single. At least that's what I kept telling myself. But I knew that this chameleon trait that I had is too prevalent, and it would be too natural, and I wouldn't know if I was really being authentic or I was trying to keep the peace. So single it was. So to make myself feel better, I got myself a ring. I had it made, and it also helped with, because as soon as I decided to be single, then men were popping up from everywhere and all the opportunities were there, but I had made this resolve that I was going to do this. So I called it my deterrent band because it deterred them, and it also was a reminder for me as to what I had promised. And so in this solo time, I started seeking out new hobbies, new interests, and some of them stuck, and some of them fell to the wayside. Some things that I thought were going to stay always fell to the wayside, and I was very aware that to the people on the outside, a lot of this was looking like I was flaky, and only those people who remained as part of my tribe really understood that I was navigating for the first time, and it was like feeling my way through the dark. And I had some beautiful people who supported me in that and allowed me to change my mind without judgments. And so along this journey of self-exploration, one very vivid meditation I had showed me again how crafty our shadow side is, and revealed to me that my ring I was wearing was not so much a deterrent band, but that I had been wearing it to validate my worth, because I felt that I would appear more valuable to others if there was somebody out there who already thought I was valuable, who owned me. Yeah, that word even came up, and I was mortified. I was like, that is not what I want for me. That is not what I want. And so I took the band off, and I decided I was going to have to step this up a notch. And so instead of just exploring, I decided to woo myself. Yep, I decided I was going to date myself like somebody who loved me. And it was a great idea, and I was super excited. Made my way down to the restaurant all dressed up, and it was a great idea until I came in the door, and the maitre d', I remember saying, yes, a table for one. And he did that little, that sad head tilt, and he's like, table for one? And I'm like, yes. And he's like, oh, follow me. And of course, then I was like second guessing myself. I'm like, oh, no, this is a bad idea. So I quickly ordered a glass of wine. And as I was sipping this wine, trying to calm down, I became very aware of the glances of the other diners. But as I sat there in that uncomfortable stillness, I also watched across the screen of my mind all the stories I attached to those glances. And for a moment, I let it get me a little rattled, and then I just let them go. And I think maybe the wine maybe helped a little with that. But I ordered an appetizer because I'm like, this is a date. And if I was on a date, I would order an appetizer and have a glass of wine and have my dinner and have my dessert. And by the time dessert came, I was so enjoying myself that I no longer noticed the glances. I'm sure they maybe were still there, but I didn't notice them, or they didn't become important to me. And I had my coffee, and that was my Band-Aid moment. That restaurant, that date with myself, because it was highly uncomfortable, and yet it was beautiful at the same time. And after that, I was able to each time do it with a little more ease. And so I took myself to the opera. I took myself to dinner and a movie. I took myself to social dancing events and dancing lessons solo, and many other events where there were mostly couples and I went by myself. And during this whole journey, I learned something, that to love myself does not mean I need to be perfect. Far from it. It means that I have to look at and embrace those parts that I don't even like, and to find a softness and a compassion for those parts and understand why they're there, and then gently change them. And that it is only from within we find our beauty and our value and our strength. And it is only then can we show up authentically in this world and claim what is ours and contribute fully to our life and our relationships. Having done this solo single experiment, I have found that it was not glamorous, it was not easy, but it was immensely rewarding. Who I am now is a completely different person, and how I show up in relationship is completely different as well. I have not finished falling in love with myself, as I plan to nurture that relationship my whole entire life, to continue to deepen my understanding of myself and therefore deepen my relationship with others. I hope you're able to find and experience the same thing. Thank you.